26, 2024 meeting of the Finance Committee to order. Tonight we'll be following the published and posted agenda. Will be recorded in live view via both Zoom and Chelmsford Telemedia and available for viewing in future use. For announcements this evening, we have a continuation of the Creating a Chelmsford's Future Strategic Planning with community forums. There will be 3 community forums at different times and locations coming up in the near future. On Tuesday, October 8th at the Chelmsford Center for the Arts from 9 to 10:30 a.m. Wednesday, October 9th at the Chelmsford Community Center from 6 to 7:30 p.m. And then Thursday, October 10th at the Chelmsford Public Library from 12 to 1:30 p.m. We ask that everybody come and share their vision for the Chelmsford at one of these events, participate, and help make your voice known. Next on our agenda this evening is an approval of minutes. We have this evening September 19th, 2024 minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review them?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Do I have a vote? A motion, rather?
A motion to approve them?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
6 in favor. Moving right along, we have a review and discussion of warrant Article 2, Happy Tales Pet Cemetery petitioner's article. And with us this evening, we have Mary Donovan, our petitioner. Hey, Mary, come forward.
I have a package for each one of you for what I am going to say. I'm sorry I had to handwrite the first page because I no longer have internet. There. Because I got scammed.
You hand wrote each
Thank you, Mary.
one? Oh, my goodness.
Thank you.
And I have 100 pictures, but I didn't bring them to
Thank
Bob.
you very much.
I did make enough.
Thank you.
And thank you for being here this evening.
Okay, my name is Mary Donovan. I live at Tanglewood Drive in Chelmsford. But I wish to thank the Finance Committee for the invitation to speak on the need of a pet cemetery in town. A pet cemetery run like the Chelmsford Human Cemetery would be safe and be legal and safe from being sold like the one in Tingsboro. Our pets are family and our children and should be treated like the human cemeteries. A pet cemetery will not cost the town or taxpayer extra money. Pet owners pay for the caskets, the grave plots, markers, and the maintenance fee. The maintenance fee will go into an endowment account for the perpetual care, just like the Chelmsford Human Cemeteries forever. The size of our heart is what really matters. Taking care of family and our pets, our children too, also need a place to rest. A pet cemetery is a place where you can visit to share memories with friends and family and be safety and security for eternity. Thank you, Mary Donovan. And if you pass my pet cemetery for Chelmsford with approval, I will be more than happy to volunteer as much time as I can. And if you will notice in the package, I have a copy of the citizens petition, a copy of the dogs that are now buried and under 2 feet of weeds. There's the price of buying a casket and a note. And if you go to the next picture, you will see my dogs, 6 of them, are buried. And I cannot visit them because I will be arrested. Because the owner now owns the land, even though I own the plot. Here's a picture of one of my dog's graves. There's 3 of them. I haven't been able to find them in 2 years. I'm working on it. The next one will show 2 of my dogs with their toys. The next page will tell you there are over 4,000 pets licensed in Chelmsford. And that's $6,000 approximately more a year, that maybe some of that money could go to help with the land and whatnot. Oops. Well, I guess that does it, and I thank you for listening to me.
Thank you.
And if you need any more questions, or if you have any now, I will be more than happy to answer them.
Does anybody have any questions?
So you're
I
looking,
also have to tell you, I have a law in process in the State House, in the legislation. But right now, it's in a third committee study to protect pets in the state of Massachusetts. There is no law to protect pets.
The cemeteries.
Thank you for listening. Any questions?
so you're just saying, hey, town, buy something, or hey, town, if there's a piece of land that isn't really great for anything else, can you think of doing a pet cemetery on it? I'm a little confused because land in Chelmsford isn't very available.
There is some.
Right, are you looking for something that, last meeting there was the pieces of land that were taken by foreclosure and they're unbuildable because for whatever reason? Are you looking for the town to be open to the concept of that being a pet cemetery? Or are you looking for a particular, piece of land? Are you looking for the town to actively look for a piece of land, or?
Yes, I would like them to.
All right, so that's the thing, is you're petitioning to not only have a cemetery, but to actively get a cemetery.
There is a couple pieces of land in town.
Did you have anything,
Could be used, yes.
so is that part of your package? Like, oh, like this, what about this, what about this, what about that?
Well, if I need to get them, showing people, I will end up coming
Yeah.
back and doing that. But I think with the help of.
Paul, yeah, if you might talk to what the vision is regarding available land and this particular petition.
As many of you may know, Mary's been
Yes.
pursuing a pet cemetery for quite some time now. You know, the challenge is, and for example, we most recently looked at the Coolest Farm property. Unfortunately, we have an opinion from council that community preservation funds are not an allowed use for cemetery purposes. So we could not use it there, or even for the Chelmsford Cemetery. So that ruled that out. The other challenge that we have is she's looking for 5 acres of land to do this because you need the area for the cemetery and then parking and access and so forth. The challenge with some of these lots that you mentioned earlier is most of those foreclosed lots, the reason they're foreclosed is because there's wetlands and therefore not suitable certainly for a cemetery. The other challenge is most of the town's land that it owns are restricted in their use, meaning they're either conservation land, which would not qualify, which most of the town's general government land is, or in the other cases, it's school purposes or cemetery purposes and so forth. The only piece of sort of unencumbered town land of any significance that the town has and has had has been Richardson Road, the former DPW yard. The challenge there and the problem there is that, as we know, is in close proximity to the well field for the North Chelmsford Water District. So I think one of the reasons we don't, we don't have something in this article or brought before you or the town at this time is we just haven't been able to identify a piece that the town has in its current possession. If this article were to pass a town meeting, then I think the message to the select board and to me is, well, then you go out and pursue that, whether it's in the form of an RFP or other means, and then come back to the town, like we would any other land purchase, saying this is the piece of land, this is what it would cost, and therefore we'd seek the purchase sale be contingent upon town meeting approval.
So 5 acres is like the kind of minimum concept?
Yeah, that's how Mary's explaining it, looking for about 5 acres of land.
No, all we need is 1 acre.
1
It's
acre.
1 acre in Tingsboro, and there's 1,000 pets up there. Human, husband and wife's ashes buried up there. And
Okay.
there's plenty of room with an acre of land. And down on Pine Hill
Okay.
Grave Cemetery, in the way back, they're headed towards 129. Why
But-
can't we add it to the pet cemetery, the human cemetery in Chelmsford?
I
So-
believe there might
Forgive
be
me on the 5 acre, 1
regulations.
acre
Yeah.
thing, but the issue is the town cemetery, elected cemetery commission does not allow this on their property. And that's out of my control and jurisdiction.
So what about the land that, Mary, what about the land that your pets are buried in? Who owns that land, and have you approached them?
God forgive me for saying it, but I know I'll get in trouble and I don't care. A crooked construction guy bought it.
Okay,
So the
And he
land,
built a two-family house on part of it.
okay.
so there's no protection currently for pet cemeteries. Unlike a human cemetery, with a pet cemetery, it's not protected from being developed into something else. So it's private property, and pets are considered still property. There's recent case law that states that.
Okay.
And because of that, because there's no protection, if someone were to buy a piece of property that had a pet cemetery on it, barring any conflict of any contract, they could do what they're currently doing in Tingsboro. And so what part of what Mary has discussed is she has she's worked with state legislators to work on or be involved in a law that would provide protections that are similar to protections for a human cemetery.
I see.
That doesn't exist currently, and so that's why there's the current cemetery in Tingsboro is the way that it is. So this would be more of a resolution that should there be available space, the town should explore if it were favorably voted for. Owning a piece of property where this could be included, and then that would, again, as Paul noted, require another vote to provide an RFP, to provide funds for that, and then a vote to establish how it's being handled, treated, maintained. You'd have to establish, as Mary mentioned, an endowment to hold the funds, much like you have with our cemeteries, where the money's held and the maintenance is covered partially by the funds that are in perpetuity held in order to maintain the location. So this is, at this stage, more of a resolution because there is no identified current property that this could be held on. And she's not asking in this article to purchase a piece of property. There's no funding available currently for that. This is kind of the first step to say, this is, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is what you'd like to see happen. You'd like the town meeting to endorse this happening, and to the extent that it can be pursued, you'd like it to be pursued.
Do you know, there's people in this town that I've been networking with, and they didn't realize it's illegal to bury your dog or your cat or animal in your backyard. And if you sell your house, your new owner of your home who buys a house, because today they gotta have a swimming pool or patios, and they dig up your animal, they can sue you for the money they paid for the house, and you lose the money and the house, they get to keep it.
Oh.
There are so many laws people don't realize. I have found out in the past 2 years.
Wow.
I have 6 dogs up there and 2 cats. I got 1 dog right now. He's 8 years old. He could die in 5 minutes. He may last 6 months. He's not in pain. He's just been diagnosed with an enlarged heart.
Oh, dear.
I just spent $2,300 to find that out. I will spend my money on my animals. I love them.
So just to clarify, no, that's okay, and I appreciate it. Just to clarify, Mary, it's not illegal, but you need to have approval from the local Board of Health in order to do it.
Within 48 hours, and they have a restriction.
There are restrictions, but it's not illegal, it's regulated.
But you know how many people never knew that?
I'm sure lots didn't know.
Yes, I didn't even know
Yeah.
that either. Or I would never have buried them in Tingsboro, which I thought was a legal pet cemetery. Only find out. I think I ought to have one in my own backyard. That's an idea. Thank you. I'm sorry.
No.
Thank you.
No.
Thank you.
Don't be sorry.
If you have any questions or you want to see pictures, I will be glad to show them to you.
All right. Any other questions?
Answer any questions. Call me.
Actually, I do have one more question. At the State House, who are you working with?
Sorry, I have to
No, that's okay. I'm going to talk really, really loud.
Okay, good.
Who are you talking to at the State House? Who are you working with?
Representative Elliott, Acevedo, Elizabeth Warren in Washington,
Okay.
and yesterday I just discovered another one in Essex County who is fighting too. I'm waiting for calls back from those people.
Okay.
I just can't stop.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda is a review and discussion of warrant Article 6, which is the free cash out reallocation. With us this evening is Paul Regazio, the petitioner on this particular article.
Again, thank you for allowing me to present my reasoning for my article. For those who don't know me, my wife and I have been residents of Chelmsford for over 55 years. We raised our 4 children here, and the 4 kids all graduated proceeded through the Chelmsford school system, public schools. And I'm thankful I can say they're now all out of my house, and my wife and I are empty nesters. Thank God. Deo gracias. During my working career, just to give you some background on who I am, I spent 6 years as a CPA working for an international auditing company, 16 years as a corporate finance manager for a high-tech company in Lexington, and 15 years of my last career was 15 years as an international controller for Charles River Laboratory in Wilmington. As you can see, finance runs deep in my veins. So again, my father had me working when I was 12, 13 years old and making out the payroll for his company. And again, as a personal basis, one of my personal priorities is never to enter into bank debt or any debt if you have current funds available. As you know, my petition relates to the $1.8 million feasibility study that was passed at the May meeting regarding the new Parker Middle School, or the proposed Parker Middle School. After that May town meeting, I was thinking about it, and I investigated what type of surplus the town was going to generate for the year ending June 30th. And I found at that time it was expected about $2 million plus. And that's when I started obtaining the signatures and getting the petition filed. I think the petition filed at the town office was in, I think, late June or early July. The surplus we have now, as I said, is $4.7 million. I do agree with the planned use of $2.5 million of that for roads. As we know, our roads need a lot of help, and also $200,000 for the sewer lines. We don't want to be known as a town that has sewer problems. And again, however, the other planned uses can be delayed, in my opinion. We don't need, it'd be nice to spend $600,000 for a playground behind the police station near McCarthy. And again, putting money into the stabilization fund, that's not a priority at this time. We already have $15 million in the stabilization fund. So again, the plan is to use $2.5 million for the roads, five or $600,000 for the recreational area near the police station, and $600,000 into the stabilization fund. And again, those are all good ideas, but they don't have priority over the roads and also this funding. Again, we know that the town has indicated that we are going to be facing deficits in the future because expenditures are increasing at a higher rate than our revenue. And again, so why are we adding? We have surplus funds. Let's use it to pay this $1.8 million, proposal for the Parker. Let's use that money for that, and let's not throw the debt into the future when we know we have problems. And again, in addition to the the expected deficits in the future. We have a $20 or $25 million expenditure for 2 fire stations and an even larger one if the Parker School, proposal goes through. How much debt do we expect the town taxpayers to spend? We now have surplus funds. Let's use it to pay off this expenditure and let's go forward. In my opinion, it would be irresponsible to add to our debt at this time. Don't borrow when free cash is available. And again, can someone here explain to me why with us having surplus funds, we spend it on some other less required items and we throw debt into the future when we know we have a problem? Can someone explain to me that or justify that?
Is that a request or is it a rhetorical question or?
Yeah, that's a question, if you can answer. I'm just saying.
I mean, we have the town manager in the audience. We also have our finance director in the audience, which I think could both speak to the borrowing that was voted upon for this particular item and for the planned spending coming up.
I'm not sure.
So I understand it correctly. The question is why would we borrow this $1.8 million rather than paying it up front? And I think the answer to that is you want to tie the users to the facility to those who are going to pay the cost for the facility. So, for example, if we're going to build a school that's going to last 30 years, 50 years, whatever the debt service is appropriate, it's appropriate that those who utilize the facility pay for the cost of providing that facility during this time of usage. That's what borrowing's about. Mm-hmm. It's what you don't want to do is the opposite, which is basically saddle the future community with costs that you didn't rightfully fund in the past, which we saw happen with the pension obligation, where the town sort of funded pensions on a pay-as-you-go basis and didn't recognize the true cost of providing it. So if we are going to build a Parker Middle School, and we don't know when or whether that will be passed, we know we cannot vote on it before the summer of 26, 2 years from now, but we don't know at this point in time how big the school is going to be, because we need state approval for that in terms of the grade configuration and so forth. It's only fair that the cost of the feasibility study, and if approved, the cost for the school, be borne out and borrowed and paid for over a 30-year period by those who are going to use the facility. And in fact, there's been some legislative consideration to extend that to a 40-year period because of the cost of these school facilities. So I think it's right and appropriate that the costs of the project, including the feasibility, be paid for by those who are going to benefit and utilize the facility. So that's the best explanation I can have in terms of why would we burden those in the future with debt. Well, it's because those in the future are going to utilize the facility and benefit from the facility, and therefore those future taxpayers who are going to have that facility should pay for it along the way as they utilize that asset.
I appreciate Mr. Cohen's opinion, and I do respect his knowledge is intelligent, and the town of Chelmsford is successful and happy because we do have a good, town manager. However, in my opinion, if I was the CFO running this organization and we had surplus funds, I would use the surplus funds to pay the $1.8 million study. That's my opinion. That's his opinion. Again, it's up to the town people to decide what they want to do. That's my presentation. Okay. Any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Any questions?
I'm going to be honest and admit, I don't understand. I don't understand what it saves us, like in a dollar figure. Like if we do this, we'll save $50,000. I just don't understand.
Well, we're committed to pay $1.8 million.
Right.
Okay, do we want to pay it now when we have surplus funds, or do we want to throw the debt to the future when we know we have funding problems? Okay?
So, different question is, why not, rather than following the same logic, is why not, we're gonna vote on a fire station, why not apply some money towards that and reduce the amount that we have to borrow in that area?
Well, that's, I mean, this is now, we have not committed to a fire station at this time. Again, that's next year or whatever.
Well,
But-
we're voting on it.
Yeah, you're voting on it, but
At
again,
the same meeting, we vote on your suggestion.
that's a possibility. I'm just saying, this 1.8 million is a debt on the town. We have the surplus funds, let's use the surplus funds, to pay for it. That's my opinion. As I said, if I was the CFO, that's what I would do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Moving along our agenda this evening, we have an opportunity for public comment before we go into our discussion and voting on recommendations. So if there's anyone who'd like to make public comment at this time, they're welcome to do so. There's no one in the Zoom room. No one here? All right, moving right along. We have a discussion of fall town meeting warrant articles and a vote of recommendations on the same. We will be following through chronologically. Let's see here. Starting with
Two.
2, I believe, is the first one. The reports are number 1.
Yeah.
So we'll go, all right, Cindy, are you going to be our,
Cindy?
Yes.
our set
Printout.
reader?
This?
Yeah.
I printed it at home.
When did I not get that?
She came
Paul
prepared.
sent it.
Huh?
Paul sent it like 3 weeks ago.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna go look at my email.
It's also appended to minutes. It's also appended to minutes, so when they're posted.
Okay.
All right.
I didn't get it because my email wouldn't receive.
I
that
wouldn't
loud
receive.
the
I
thing.
sent it to 3 different emails of yours. It
Yeah,
didn't come
it's
to any
not
of them?
Yeah, it's not receiving it, but I did download from the select board, the package that's a PDF.
Okay.
And I think it's the same.
Okay,
Yeah, so I'll append
perfect,
that.
excellent.
Yes, Jim, I'll
You'll be
I'll
the
read the-
sacrificial lamb?
I will. Starting with Article number 2, I make a motion to recommend approval of Article 2, citizen petition, Pet Cemetery, submitted by Mary A. Donovan, as written.
Do you have a second?
I second it.
Discussion.
I just want to understand we like this as an idea, but it's not saying, oh, we must have a cemetery. It's sort of like if something comes up, we consider it as a use?
Well, it sounds like from what Paul was saying is that if it's in the affirmative, if we vote, and the town votes in the affirmative, that they are obligated to take a harder look? Is that what you were saying, Paul?
Technically, we're not obligated to do anything.
Okay.
The legislative body, but
a
practically
resolution, right.
and realistically, what would happen is, I would obviously meet with the select board, but I would feel it incumbent upon me as the manager to undertake the time, effort, and expense of issuing an RFP and pursuing a suitable piece of land, because I don't know of a current piece of town land that could accommodate this request.
Yeah.
And then, therefore, after taking that effort, then report back to the board, select board, and then ultimately to town meeting in terms of the results of that effort, whatever may come of it. So, yeah, so it's.
Because the presenter, Mary, she really made it a wonderful emotional case, but there wasn't a lot about, oh, we'll just run it like the other cemetery, because cemeteries for people, obviously, Chelmsford's had a cemetery for a very long time, and people know exactly how to do it and how much it costs and how much to spend on it and things like that. I have no idea what size a pet lot is, how long would that pet lot be for for a very, very long time, forever.
Yeah.
Perpetuity.
Thank you. And it's just a case of, it's not, I know that many people would love it. I just don't understand how the town could afford it. Like, is it what would you have to charge to make it an affordable thing? Or should I put it this way, what would the town have to charge people burying their pets to make it a net neutral
No.
item?
I don't fully know, but what I do know is, and it kind of may have been overlooked, we do fund our cemetery operations. We have a line item in our budget for the Chelmsford Public Cemetery. So I don't want to mislead people that a cemetery is fully
Okay,
self-sufficient. The answer to your question in realistic terms is what will the utilization be, and therefore what will the cost be for maintenance? Because just like a cemetery, part of your cost of the cemetery is your infrastructure, but it's also the utilization.
right, because.
So therefore, how big is this pet cemetery? How many lots? What is the maintenance cost? And is there a point of an economic cost curve in terms of, do you really, is it something you'd actually have a greater deficit in the early years but have fewer contributors, as opposed to the later years when you'd have a more stable base of the endowment fund that would go towards some of the expenses? So we just don't know, and I don't have examples of other municipalities who've run this operation.
So there is, as far as you know, there are not like,
I just don't have any. I know that the town of Littleton had a donated piece of land adjacent to their cemetery, but from what I know, it's not heavily utilized. And so therefore, I can't break out, or I haven't been provided to me, this is the cost for them to operate the pet cemetery.
So if this were to pass, you'd really need an RFI, not an RFP.
But I don't know who could respond to that RFI.
Oh, well, I don't either.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. The RFP would be for the land parcel. And then the town would have to say, do you want to expend this for the asset? The issue of demand for the service and the operating costs would be speculative. We would have to make some assumptions of, particularly at the upfront cost, because if there is infrastructure, so if you do acquire a piece of land, it's like anything. What would it be to transform that piece of land in terms of a parking area, pathways, and so laying out
An acquisition.
an acquisition? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that we just don't know. But obviously, I know there's got to be a fixed cost and then the variable cost after you go forward. Just don't know.
yeah, I personally just, it's not that it's a terrible idea, it's an idea that is, not, I would like to know the details, like, I don't know how, my husband and I are choosing to be cremated because there is no family lot left for us in our family plots. So somebody's gonna get us in a jar. So I don't know, like I said, I just don't know. It's not that it's a bad idea, I just don't understand how much it would cost.
There are too many questions open
Too
at
many
this point.
questions.
Yeah.
So I think the only way to get to the answers to those open questions is to perhaps pass the resolution, right? To have the RFI go through, kind of flipping the coin a little bit, right? Unless there is another community out there where we can benchmark, but it doesn't sound like that's possible.
I mean, it's not the only way. There is the current. It's in committee right now, and Lord knows how long that will take and where it will go from there. But that's not out of committee yet, so there's no law pertaining to it that would help support and preserve. Right. That's not here yet.
Yeah.
Additionally, there's not a lot of information out there regarding cost acquisition, how it be handled and maintained, and I think that would be necessary. My concern is in passing, is that we create this quote-unquote mandate to go explore and expend on something we don't have a lot of information on yet. And so there is a cost that is associated with this,
Absolutely.
and I think it might be, unfortunately, premature. I don't disagree that it's a valid concern and a valuable thing to pursue. I'm concerned about the unknown costs that we're going to incur immediately if we're going out and pursuing and looking into this through this potential resolution. So I'm not necessarily against it. I think it's premature, unfortunately.
So would you be more
Agree.
comfortable if there was, the stuff that she said was in committee, that came out and there was some?
If there was some law on the books that had come out of committee, that we had a direction as to how these were going to be treated, I'd feel more comfortable. If we had an idea about where, an identified piece of land that might be needed for acquisition, what that cost might be, I'd feel a little more comfortable. If we had an idea of what the maintenance costs were from other towns that maintain these, or if there are other towns that maintain these, I think I'd feel more comfortable. I'd just, like other articles we've had in the past, where there are so many open-ended questions that could lead to unintended expenditures here, I'm just concerned that it's premature.
I actually agree with you. I kind of know, I used to live in Kingsborough for a while as a youth, and that pet cemetery was always kind of like somebody's backyard.
Mm.
So it wasn't well regulated. It was known as a pet cemetery, but it wasn't, it doesn't, I'm sorry for her outcome, but it doesn't actually surprise me.
Yeah.
So I would, if this came across, I'm likely to abstain because I think there's just too many unknowns. I don't want to say I'm against pet cemeteries, I'm just saying I don't know enough to make a decision.
A valid, yeah, I understand what you're saying, yeah.
And I agree with everything that the chair said, but I would also like to add to what Elaine said, and you're right, it is kind of an emotional issue. We had an emotional presentation, and that's perfectly fine considering the subject. But remember, we're a finance committee, and we're supposed to base our decisions based on what we think the financial impact to the town will be. In this particular case, we have no idea. And this could, you could have a resolution at town meeting. The town manager could do his RFI. The thing could fall flat, no response. There's no possible way that we're going to do this because we just don't have the land, and that's fine. But we don't know that that's going to happen. You know, this could be carried on, and we could find ourselves in a position where now we're in a position to buy land and so on and so forth. And of course, the town meeting would be the final arbiter of that. But where the costs are just not known, I think a responsible action by the FinCom is to recommend against the article, because that's what we do. We're supposed to be concerned and base our votes on knowledge of what the expenditures are going to be and how they're going to impact the town. So that's my attempt at de-emotionalizing the argument.
Sure.
I agree with that, Sam.
I agree with everything. So one of the things that I actually did my first job was work at a cemetery, and there's this little thing called perpetual care that was in front of some of the graves. And this was a very old cemetery. It went back to pre-Revolutionary War times. And if you think about those, and after mowing the grass, right, and think about the maintenance of hundreds of years of that, it's not that hard to figure out the business case. Right, it's not that hard, and so this would be, I think, another commitment. And I'm not even just thinking about the emotional side. I totally agree. I got a cat and a dog, but it's also the time and the mind share that's also a drain. Right, so this is yet another thing that we would have to manage. That I think there's just so many other higher priorities at this point.
Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Sir.
All those against?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm abstaining. Article 3.
Article 3. I make a motion to recommend approval of Article 3, Cemetery Improvement and Development Fund, submitted by the Cemetery Commission, to transfer $60,000 from the sale of graves and lots account to the Cemetery Improvement and Development Fund.
I second it.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
6 in
Abstain.
favor? Well, 5 in favor, 1 abstain.
Article 4, I make a motion to recommend approval of Article 4, Sewer Construction Stabilization Fund, submitted by the town manager, to transfer $232,335 from free cash to the Sewer Construction Stabilization Fund.
I second it.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. 6 in favor. Article 5. Oh, there's no action on Article 5. Article 6.
I make a motion to recommend approval of Article 6, Citizen Petition, transfer free cash to fund the Parker Middle School feasibility study, submitted by Paul Regarzio, to transfer up to $1.8 million from free cash to offset the expected town share of the cost approved, about $900,000 after expected MSBA reimbursement of about 52% at the May 2024 town meeting for the feasibility study of the Parker Middle School.
Second it.
Discussion?
The earlier point that the gentleman over here made about we could use this money in other ways, so it's why this particular, I still don't quite understand, and I probably have the least financial background of all you sitting up here. is I don't understand why moving it for this one cause? Why aren't there other are all the things that we are about to engage debt on? Is this like when when I was younger and my husband and I were younger and we had like different bills, credit cards, student loans, car payments, we'd pay the highest interest one off first. So, you try to do it that logical. So I don't understand why this is the most logical way to use this free cash.
Well, my understanding, if I can answer it for you, maybe it helps me to vote.
Okay.
My understanding is that the money that's been out, the decision to spend the money on the study has already been passed. And all we're doing here is deciding, rather than borrow to pay it, we would pay it off. In other words, just pay it with free cash and therefore not have to borrow. Did I get that right? Okay. If I didn't, help me.
You got it right.
So, and to your point, there could be other things, or maybe it was my point, there could have been other things that we could have taken the same approach to. But I'm just, would rather we had looked at all of the other free cash, because this is, well, anyways, this is how we're doing it, so.
You mean that?
Yeah,
Yeah, that.
thank you.
That comes later.
Yeah, I know that, but, we're trading one thing off against the other. I'd
Sure.
just like to refresh my decision-making, looking at the other, what's
No, I-
on the docket.
I agree, Dave. Understanding what would have to come off in order to address this, I think is important, because yes, it's 4.7, but there's a proposed allocation that would completely use all of the funds available, including that $560,000, $482 to the free cash general stabilization fund, if everything else were to pass 4, 7, 8, 11, 12, 14.
Right.
So yeah, there are other one-time use, one-time funds that are being used and allocated, and that's typically how free cash should be spent. One-time use, one-time funds. They should not be used for general budget. They should not be used for ongoing things. So while I understand the petitioner's position, where this is a study and looking not to incur additional debt at what I would say is a very modest borrowing amount due to our good financial position and our bond rating. But I agree with the manager's characterization of this being spread out over the course of a borrowing, because it's being used for the greater scheme of the MSBA project in general. That will be something that is going into the future. I can't say that I wouldn't have argued a little differently, or maybe even been a little bit more receptive to this if we knew what the free cash was when this vote was being made. If for instance, the Parker School reimbursement feasibility study was being voted on at this town meeting rather than the previous town meeting, maybe I would have taken a little harder look at it and said, well, it is a one-time use. It is a feasibility study, but it's been voted on. It's been planned for. I can't see retroactively saying, well, let's use free cash. And yes, there are other competing things. There are always going to be other competing things. My other concern is we have a very large capital budget, and it doesn't address most of the things we need to address with our capital. And so free cash we've tended to attribute to projects that we can't get to through capital. And that's going to continue. We also have concerns going on with the budgets in the next couple of years. So I personally, I'm not in support of this article.
Yeah, but I do respect very much having other people in the town have, question and offer other ways of doing
Yep.
things. I think to not have that it would be a shame. I think it's great, and I thank you very much for doing it.
And thank you for saying that, because I agree 100%. And, we never want people like the petitioner to refrain from doing that. I have a difficult time with this a little bit because, as a real old Yankee, I'm in sympathy with the petitioner's position. But on the other hand, as a finance person my whole career, I do understand the effect of paying off debt in cheaper dollars. So we have an inflationary economy. We're always going to have inflation. And if we spread $1.8 million over 30 years, even with the interest rates, by about the 8th or 9th year out, we're going to be paying a loan off in dollars that are worth a lot less than $1.8 million paid out immediately today. So I think as a matter of prudent financial management, I would much rather spread this payment out over the 30 years and take advantage it's kind of a grotesque way to talk about it, but take advantage of the declining value of the dollar, which is what happens when you pay back loans like this. So that's how I see it. So I'll be voting against the article.
I would like to make a different comment on and respect, but one of the comments was that, we're going to build another playground or something and spend some money for that. And then later on, we're going to borrow money that's going to we're going to vote on borrowing money to, basically be a tax override. So, there's some serious thought that has to go into free cash every year.
Yes.
And this is a particular windfall, to be quite honest, from what little time I've had on this committee. I don't remember, has it ever been bigger than this before, Paul?
It has.
Yeah.
It has?
Yes.
Okay, then I'm corrected.
But it's the biggest in the last couple of years.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, nevertheless, I am against this.
Okay.
Yeah, and I tend to agree. I think the best diversity is thought, experience, and approach, and coming in different ways. And I love the engagement. With this one, it's just echoing similar sentiments. I feel like there is a lot of factor around the stabilization fund. We have seen a 5-year projection out, and so there's incredible challenges coming ahead. And so I'd rather not burn the cash only to find ourselves out of cash in other situations in the future. And I think that the money's already spoken for, and there'd be a hard trade-off decision that we'd have to make for that $1.8 million. But I love the concept, and I hate debt. I hate debt, so I totally get it. But sometimes a necessary evil, so I'd be voting against this one.
So I think the other items on the list, the playground, you mentioned the playground. I think that's important. I think that's important for our community. And for the kids to play, for the parents to take their kid, have some place to take their kids. Documentation digitization, hugely important. I feel, each year those documents continue to degrade. The tree and invasive species plan, I think that's a great concept, and try to get ahead of any invasives that, we can perhaps down the line, funnel some money to help our tree lines on our streets. So I love the concept. We already voted on it. I too will be voting no.
And just for clarification, it's not a playground, it's courts. It's courts at a location that had courts in the past. It's for use of the general population of Chelmsford, and it's been on the docket for a few years now.
Well, I have to respond. My point wasn't that I was against that.
No.
Sure.
Okay? My point
I didn't
is
see it that way.
that given the fact that we have in the town, we're probably not getting as much school money, from the state as we should be getting, okay? Which means that coupled with probably not having a large industrial base to share our tax rate with, we fundamentally are running this town with two handicaps as we move forward and I think Paul and his team are doing a marvelous job of doing it. But my only point is that the debt that's coming at us, it really concerns me. It really does. And we're going to do 2.5% every year going forward. It's a given, as far as I'm concerned. So when we have any pay down of the debt any way we could, or avoiding debt, is something I'm going to consider.
Sure.
It's a matter of what's more important. And so, because the bottom line is, I think that every project that comes before us is going to be a good one. It's just a matter of how good they're going to be.
Again, I'd like to ask, again, not the person with a finance degree, I have an English degree. Stabilization fund, that is money we throw into an account that helps to pay for emergency, oh my gods, we didn't expect it. And
That's one use of it.
That's one use.
okay, what is the other uses of a stabilization fund?
Well, Jim, you want to?
So our stabilization fund is and noted regularly by the audit committee, auditors, that it's used as a basis for our general position going forward. Just much like when you look at a balance sheet and you look at the reserves that someone has, you want to say, do they have the ability to weather a storm? And so our stabilization fund, our policy is to be between 5 and 10% of the general budget. And we're right now, if this proceeds, we'll be about 9.5%. But with the noted concerns that are upcoming, the noted potential having to use portions of the stabilization fund if we encounter issues, and we think we may, like other towns around us have, where they've had to have override votes which have actually failed for just handling the general budget, and they've had to make hard decisions on cuts at many levels in their towns. And so that stabilization fund is not just I've heard it characterized as a rainy day fund. It is really a source of funds that gains interest, is put there to help our bond rating, and it's a good reason why we have our AAA rating.
Is because we have the.
We have the reserves that they have been reviewed.
Hence the title, stabilization.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what that means. And that's very important. And I would also note that the Massachusetts Association of Town Finance Committees recommends that you have a budget surplus every year in your budget, and they recommend between 2 and 5% of your annual budget. So the generation of free cash is if you don't do that on a regular basis, that's looked at negatively by the bond rating agencies and so forth.
So this funding of the general stabilization will not bring us over the 10, that is.
No, it will not.
Okay.
And keep in mind that every year the budget is increasing.
Yes.
So yes, we'll put money in, and at current will be 9.5, but then.
And over
budget.
over the past 20 years, there have been instances where we have made withdrawals from the stabilization fund for various and sundry reasons, which were
I
deemed.
think when I was a town meeting rep, there was one for a fire truck a couple years back.
Don't recall the specifics, but I
Yeah.
can remember instances where it's been done. So yes.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those, let me get back to the article before we
You
vote.
want to make a motion in the affirmative or the?
Well, the motion's already been made
Oh, I'm sorry.
and seconded, so we've been in discussion.
That's what happens when you get old.
So all those in favor of Article 6? All those opposed?
Aye.
Article 7.
6 more.
Thank you for your respectful discussion of it, and I appreciate it. I disagree with it, but that's the way things.
That's okay, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
We
Thank
you for
appreciate-
doing
We
it.
appreciate
Really
it.
appreciate it.
Article 7. I make a motion to recommend approval of Article 7, roadway and sidewalk construction submitted by town manager to transfer $2,500,000 from free cash to fund roadway and sidewalk construction, including all incidental and related
I
expenses.
second it.
Discussion.
If you
I wanted to second that.
All right, from now on, you got it.
He jumped before she finished, I mean.
We'll give you number 8.
No, I think the best way to keep good roads is just keep keeping them. So that's, delayed maintenance.
And you were an
doesn't-
English major.
What's that?
Ooh.
When you know the rules, like Picasso, when you know the rules, you can break the rules.
We're only on Article 7, guys. Any further discussion? No. Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Article 8.
Article 8. I make a motion to recommend approval, Article 8, McCarthy Middle School exterior recreational area adjacent to the police station, submitted by the town manager to transfer $975,000 from free cash to fund the construction of outdoor recreational playing surfaces and pedestrian access improvements at the McCarthy Middle School located at 230-250 North Road on the portion of the property located adjacent to the police station, including any incidental and related expenses.
Do I have a second?
Second.
That was your chance.
I gave
But
you-
no, because I have questions, so I don't want to second something I don't quite understand.
Well, second for discussion.
Sure.
Seconded for discussion.
Discussion.
What's there now?
It was all torn up.
Yeah.
Okay, there was a tennis court there.
Right.
And that kind of got frost heaves or whatever in it. And then, from a safety point of view, as explained to me, we tore it up. Okay. How am I
This-
doing? Am I doing
You're doing well, yeah. No,
okay?
it was,
Think I knew what
it
I
was,
doing.
there was an article a couple of years back regarding what we would do with this, whether it would be used for, and all the rave that's
right.
just coming out at that point was pickleball.
Right.
So a lot of discussion was around that, or putting in parking here. Parking was another thing, because there's a dearth of parking for the athletic facilities behind it, and for events at the police station. So that was discussed. That's when the infamous paved paradise put a parking lot comment was made. And so it was defeated at town meeting and brought back to a committee. It sat in committee, people talked about it, it went on and on. This is what we have. This is a proposal now, a couple of years on.
So I'm just trying to get it, like I said, understand it better. I did ask no lights. I remember that when I asked that question. So no lights. So it's a daytime only thing. And being by the police station, it won't have, I see on like Town Talk and stuff like that is, some of the conservation lands are getting, teenagers spray painting things and stuff. So that probably wouldn't happen there because, the police are right next door.
If it were to, that'd be pretty brazen.
Yeah.
I would say.
Never say never, but
Right.
I mean,
Yeah, so from a point of view where the police are next door, that I think is, like, makes it almost a better playground, a better place to hang out, and it's also not at night, so there's nothing untowards, really, under the, people think dark means, nobody sees you. So my kids are all grown, and I, unfortunately, unlike Mr. Rezgasio, I do not have an empty nest yet. Sorry. Anyway, I'm for it.
yeah, it also addresses with the field hockey, the two field hockey surfaces. The field hockey that's been changed from over at the Chelmsford High School was just finished, and bring it back over here so that we have those being reintroduced in a relatively similar location. And it's right between the police station, the skate park, and then you have the McCarthy field right behind it. And the McCarthy School is literally across the driveway there. So, yeah, I think it looks good. I think it's a good plan for it. I think it addresses a lot of discussion over the last couple of years of what we put there and how do we improve it.
I concur.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Article 9.
I make a motion to recommend approval of Article 9, replacement of sewer force main pipe on Progress Avenue, submitted by the town manager, to transfer $125,000 from the Sewer Enterprise Fund retained earnings to replace the sewer force main pipe on Progress Avenue, including any incidental and related expenses.
I second it.
Good for you.
We'll take turns.
That's fine.
Discussion.
I'm in favor of it.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in favor of it. I'm still, there's something about it that in my gut thinks like, do we have a bigger problem, right? And so I know that there's other things in underway, but when you start to see this, I don't know if it's a canary in the coal mine, but that's just something I want to keep a close eye on. Right? Because if this is a situation, and it's like, now imagine that we've got a town-wide situation, like, that's a much, much, much bigger problem. So, yeah, I certainly, got to do the maintenance.
The minor question I have is, during the repair, will that, like, soil studies, like, is the soil super acid there? Why there? Why failure there? I don't know if that's just part of the natural process. I'm totally for it. I'm just wondering how, I share his concern about, is this the coal, canary in the coal mine?
Well, I think from the presentation, the DPW director stated that they're unsure. They did take a soil sample from the location. They're having that tested. They believe this is maybe an anomaly. They can't say for certain, but without proceeding with this repair, we really won't know.
So for the repair, just same concerns.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Article 10.
I make a motion to recommend approval of Article 10, sewer infiltration and inflow, submitted by the town manager, to transfer $650,000 from the Sewer Enterprise Fund retained earnings to correct, remedy, repair, prevent, and prohibit any and all forms of infiltration or flow from groundwater or other sources of leaking into pipes, facilities, and other components of the sewer system, including any incidental and related expenses.
It's your turn.
Second it.
Discussion. Any discussion?
I think we're all pro
I think,
this.
yeah,
Okay.
this is total pro.
All right. Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Article 11.
I make a motion to recommend approval of Article 11, documentation digitalization, submitted by the town manager, to transfer $300,000 from free cash to digitize and manage public records, including any incidentals and related expenses.
I second this motion.
Discussion.
Go, Elaine.
I love this one. No, this is,
This is a good one.
this makes a lot of sense in so many different ways, because
My only question is, are we done? Will this do it? No. There's more to come. How much more?
See, Harrison, you didn't have to,
So are
you
we-
stood up and didn't have to come up.
Are we about halfway done? Can you,
Yeah,
a
I mean, where are we?
quarter, a 10%?
I spoke too soon.
Good evening, members of the board. Harrison Mayo, Town Departmental Support Coordinator for the Town Clerk's Office. It's uncertain at this time the exact percentage. We haven't received a full inventory like the accounting files. We know that's a good start. We aren't sure exactly the true volume of those files. We expect to have a better picture of that moving forward. My guess is, a quarter is probably a generous estimate.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
one more question.
Yep.
So this gets paid for. How much time will this cover? I mean, you talked about roughly a quarter of the records be covered. How long will it take for that money to be, everything in that quarter to be scanned in?
Probably, my guess would be by this time next fall, this project would be completed, the proposed scope of work.
So this quarter would come back and you'd say, okay, we did a quarter, we need some more for the second quarter, or?
Yes, and we would have a better estimate of exactly how much more there is. Part of what this project has entailed is trying to get estimates from the other departments. We don't have a full list of those estimates yet, but we do hope to have a better idea.
So
of
this
that moving
quarter is
forward.
not the trial run, but the proof of concept, this is how it's gonna work, this is how long it takes, this is how much gets done in this time, if you provide us these materials in a scannable format.
Correct, and the cost estimate that was provided is an average of several vendors that we have looked at. Depending on the vendor that we do move forward with, there may be an opportunity to do more than the estimated number of files with this amount of money. And so where those efficiencies are possible, we would look to get as much done with it as possible.
My suggestion would be when you come back next year and ask for more money, you lay out how much, over what period of time are we talking, so that this committee knows what they're looking at, not just in 1 year, but for the total project. That would be my suggestion.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Is there any benefit to having a multi-year contract?
That's a good question.
There may, but the opportunity that several of the vendors that we looked at are on the state contract for this, so there's a set price through that state contract. So the benefits of that were done through the state's contract. So we don't have to do a separate procurement to obtain those benefits.
This is like the combis. Yeah. Thank you. I think. It's an important project.
It has to be
And
done.
it has to be done. It
Absolutely.
has to be done.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Eventually, we'll get there. And it'll be done. Everything will be digitized and it'll be easily accessible. I can't wait for the day that all those records, especially from the building department, are easily accessible. That's going to be fantastic.
Yes.
Productivity will be great.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Article 12? Oh, let me get there.
I make a motion to recommend approval of Article 12, Tree and Invasive Species Inventory and Management Plan, submitted by Town Manager to transfer $75,000 from free cash for a tree and invasive species inventory management plan, including any incidental and related expenses.
I don't want to hog this.
Second it.
Discussion.
This is awesome, because as the questions I asked during the thing is, yes, we need to do it for the town land, because the percentages of trees being lost, and we all, growing up as little kids, you all hear, trees help us make oxygen. And from my own personal fight with bittersweet, is if anything that's learned can be shared with the town as a whole on how to get rid of those horrible, other plants like that. That would be great use, could be something that the whole community could use.
I do want to know where the knotweed is, where it's located, because that's a real concern. Because it's leading in some communities to make certain pieces of property uninsurable.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's right.
Why is that? I don't know.
Knotweed can destroy foundations.
Yikes.
Wow.
This is just preventative maintenance. Like, the sooner you get this stuff under control, the less it costs and less time and effort it takes.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Article 13.
I make a motion to recommend approval of Article 13, golf course netting and pole extensions, submitted by Town Manager to transfer $50,000 from the Golf Course Enterprise Fund retained earnings to extend the property line netting and poles located at the first hole of the Chelmsford Country Club, including any incidental and related expenses.
I second.
Discussion? I mean, yes, it's pursuant to current law. It is a trespass. It can expose the town. It's town-owned land. I was at a event for a organization I belong to last night at the Granite Links, and they're, just to protect the parking lot, their netting is 100 or so feet in the air. The poles and the netting, and I mean, it's there, and they recognize the need for it. They put it in, and that's not protecting against any other people's property. It's just they're the people parking in the parking lot next to it. So, I get it, I guess. I wish you wouldn't have to do it. I don't know what's going to look like, because it's definitely going to be above the tree line.
Yes.
Bet you could paint it green. And it'll tie it.
Well, there's a solution.
So migratory bird catcher is what you're looking
That's
for.
exactly
Okay.
what it would be.
And we'd have more hawks, because they're like, look, there's a buffet.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Article 14.
14. I make a motion to recommend approval of Article 14, South Row School, partial roof replacement schematic design submitted by the town manager to transfer $100,000, article as written.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Article 15.
I make a motion to recommend approval of Article 15, free cash to the General Stabilization Fund submitted by town manager to transfer $526,152 from free cash to the General Stabilization Fund.
I second it, now that I understand what it is.
Discussion? No, this is the proper place to put it.
Yep, agreed.
I want a two-thirds vote rather than a one-half vote.
Yep. Makes sense.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Article 16.
I make a motion to recommend approval of Article 16, West Chelmsford and South Chelmsford Fire Station Construction Project submitted by town manager to borrow $25 million as written.
Do a second?
Second.
Discussion?
I'm waiting to hear somebody else. I can go all night on this.
We're looking at you.
If you want to sway me at all, this is your chance.
Here's looking at you, kid.
I would really like to hear from other people because
Sure.
I am truly
It's a lot of money.
finding this hard to deal with.
It's a lot of money. I feel that it's absolutely necessary to ensure the safety and security of our town. And to Chief's comments last week during the meeting, the construction of these fire stations are going to allow the department to grow as the community grows. I understand it's a lot of money. I think I think we have to do it.
I just like to probe a little bit more, like around the growth aspect of it, right? So to me, this makes sense, right? To me, there's a couple of factors here at play. One is it's kind of a compliance project. Compliance in that if we don't do it, then we're not within OSHA, regulations. And so I'd love to learn a little bit more what happens. Do we get fined? Do the fire stations have to shut down? Right, and we have a degradation to service. The other thing I look at is it's a little bit different where I personally believe in the philosophy of pre-funding things, right? And so in my opinion, like the people who are enjoying these services for the last 20 years were paying $100 a year per household less than they should have for these services. You knew that this is going to come. You knew that we would have to fund a replacement for the stations, but we just weren't paying for it over that period of time. Right? So that's a little bit of a different perspective. Right? So I think I just like to learn a little bit more. Like, do we need something that's as big? Is there a way of economizing it a little bit? Right? If we're not going to grow as much as maybe the plans are outlined as.
I don't know if I would characterize it as not paying for something that we needed. I think there are multiple competing asks throughout the town and a very finite way of funding it. And this, I agree that they, especially seeing the conditions of the two locations, I think the study was necessary to determine whether or not we did need to maintain 5. And from what we're hearing, based upon coverage and response times, especially that comment about shutting down 2, I guess from your committee, there was some white space, which would lead to about 8-minute response times for certain parts of town, was just unacceptable. But there are also concerns about the space itself, whether or not it's safe for the personnel, how do we address that? My concern relates to the other competing things we do have coming. We have a 2.5 proposition that would be required in order to handle this, And yes, it leads to a increase in property taxes. Property taxes are a perennial concern, but all the constituents, and yes, we have to pay property taxes in order to support our town government, the services that we receive and are provided. But we also have other things coming up, like the MSBA project. And that's going to require a 2.5 proposition override vote. And that we're told, will be reimbursed at 52% based upon the MSBA and what's selected. We don't know the price of it, although we do know that Tingsborough's cost $83 million currently, and they are in charge of paying for $54 million of it over a 30-year period. So we can guess, and yeah, it's tough to make an estimate because we don't know what's being built for what configuration, because we have to explore that. There was another vote earlier this evening about whether or not we fund that study a different way. That study's going to tell us, and yes, it wouldn't happen until 2026, but we have to be cognizant of the other things that are coming on. So I don't disagree we need this, and I don't disagree we need to improve these two locations, and I don't disagree that there are needs there. I'm concerned about the public in general's appetite, and I'm concerned about how we address that, because what I don't want to have happen is that this gets championed, this gets pushed through, and all of a sudden we're facing another MSBA vote where we need a 2.5 override for a larger amount, and people are saying, well, I don't want to support that. I just supported the 2.5 previously. And we're left with our youngest school being the 1977 high school again. It's especially where we have more residential projects coming in. We have more residents coming in. So there are other competing concerns. I don't know how we're going to fund all this.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, I don't know.
Can I ask a couple of questions to the chief or do the same, and these are all mitigation type of questions, do the same employees stay in the same stations? In other words, the two people that would be in Station 3, the two people that would be in Station 5, are they always the same people, or do you rotate them?
There is contractually, there's what is known as a bid process. So when you gain seniority in the department, you get what they call a bid, so you get to choose your station location by that bid process. So the longer that you're on, the more seniority that you get more seniority, you get to choose which station. Okay. So some people will tend to stick, with an engine 2 or 3, but there are others who like to mix it up, to go to different locations. And there's 4 units, right, Jerry? And there's 4 different units, yes. And it's also, per the last contract, you can now, when you used to take a bid on a unit, you were stuck there unless you got promoted. Now, by the last contract, you actually could bid off a unit. So if you're working on, say, I'll give an example, Unit 2 for 20 years, and then your last couple of years before you retire, you want to go on to Unit 1, that's a possibility. So you can switch units, you can switch stations based on your seniority.
So, I hate to ask it, but you opened the door. So, is there a lot of competition for 3 and 5? I mean, are the people that are there, are they last ones, that they're in the danger zone and everybody else is in the new stations?
I would answer that it's based on your preference. Because when I do my finance presentation, I usually give a list of the responses per station. So 1's the busiest, followed by 2, and then 3, then usually 4 and 5, they go back and forth. So it depends on, to answer that, I suppose what you like for your workload. Could be the person you work with might be out at that station. There's a lot of factors that come into it.
Got it.
So I just want to say, so it's not always the people bid for the prettiest one and the most update one. They sometimes bid just to hang with their person they get along with.
It could be somebody you like, could be somebody that has bid before you like that partner, you choose to work with that person. Could be acquired a station because maybe you're taking a promotional exam, you're going to school. Your younger folks tend to be towards engines 1 and 2 because they like it busier. It depends kind of, and probably depends on where you are in your career.
Is there a risk of the project being more than $25 million?
I think you answered, oh, go ahead.
Yes. That's the short answer.
Yeah, there's
always a risk.
potential
Always a
for
risk.
creep.
But we work with our consultant through the permanent building committee to price it in 26, fiscal year $26, because if the vote succeeds at town meeting, we're gonna spend the next year designing it, constructing it, bid package and so forth. It'd be bid in 26. And then I took the higher amount, as Virginia explained, in terms of the cost range, so that we wouldn't have to come back, because I've learned not to come back for more money on a project. right?
Really?
Imagine that.
Imagine that. So yes, the hope is that 25 will cover it, the higher
To the
cost.
best of you.
Yeah, and one more question, I think it would be to you, is, okay, I understand 2.5, 2.5, 2.5. What does the override be? 2 3/4, 3.1? What is the override at? Okay, if this is every year, the funding gets go to.
An override is a permanent adjustment to your 2.5.
All right, that's what I
So
You're
it
asking
means
what the percentage is.
you're increasing the base,
Yeah.
essentially. When you do an override, you're increasing the base, and then you're still going at you're increasing the levy base. So that's the override, and then you're continuing with the 2.5%.
You can ask for,
Oh, this is a debt exclusion?
Yeah.
It goes away
Last sentence.
when you pay it off.
Right.
Okay.
Excuse me, this is a debt exclusion.
you're not under that
Yeah,
constraint.
so
Right.
what's being sought under this article we would have to, then first it needs town meeting approval, and then it needs to go before all voters at the ballot box, and it's a Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion. I was asked a question on this at either an earlier FinCom meeting or possibly at the Select Board. So the main difference is an operational override is asking the voters to approve a permanent increase in the tax levy base. But a debt exclusion is asking the voters to approve a temporary increase over the life of the bond to fund this project. And as Dave brought up the last meeting, we say temporary, we propose to borrow this money over 20 years to construct the fire station. So it would be over 20 years. In the beginning, we did, I did some calculations for the average assessed value, residential home value. The first year, we see it increasing at just over $157. And then because we're paying level principal and the interest declines over time, the increase to that person's bill would slowly go down over time.
Over how many years?
Over 20 years. 20 years is the term.
But what happens if we have other projects?
Those would also, if the voters, and then this is just, hypothetical, if the voters in 2 or 3 years approve New Parker Middle School, that will allow the town to increase the tax levy base to cover that as well. Yeah. Right, so it declines over time. So by year 20, it would increase that same person's bill by $91. However, like to David's question, if you're adding more projects on, that's going to increase.
Because I think if you go before the town meeting and the board, don't you have to show some sort of a projection of the next 5, 10 years, something? I mean,
Yes, we have.
We're doing
If you
an
go,
override, but I don't know what else is coming.
if you go to the town website and you go to through the fire department page, there, the fire station study committee, there's a debt projection that I did, and it shows excluded debt 5 years for the 5 previous fiscal years, the current fiscal year 25, and it shows 20 years in the future. And what we said at a previous meeting is, I would like to show additional projects, but we don't have good cost estimates, and we don't know the approach that's going to be taken on the Parker Middle School at this time. But as soon as I have them,
Right, but let me go to your point, Dave. We publish every year a 5-year capital plan that's published in the book. To my knowledge, looking out 5 years and probably 10 years, I don't see anything else on the horizon other than the middle school. In other words, there isn't a police station project coming, there isn't a town office building major project coming, there's not a library project coming. Aside from the fire stations in the Parker Middle School, there is nothing that we foresee on the immediate horizon that's going to be subject to the property tax. The only other variable that's out there that's unknown is the sewer issue. But the sewer issue would be paid for through the sewer users, just like we're currently paying it now. We're no longer paying the debt service on the sewer project. That debt exclusion is gone. That got paid off last year. The final phases of the sewer project are paid for from that sewer, assessment betterment, capital assessment fee.
That's
So,
still
but it's
taxed
still
to the
but you're asking
town.
but you're asking what out there is in the future. But quite frankly, I think we're pretty darn good place, aside from the school facilities, than any other comparable community in this region and perhaps across the state. We are quite proud of the facilities condition that we are in a community, and I think over the last almost 20 years, and even before that, that we've really have come a long way in terms of our infrastructure, and that's why you see us tonight making the request from the free cash to supplement our capital requests, because we know our capital requests are significant because of the community that we are. But that's not atypical from where we would be if we were standing tonight in Tewksbury or in Franklin or Natick or what have you. But to answer your question succinctly, I don't see anything that coming before this community in the next 5 to 10 years other than fire station issues and the school issues in the foreseeable future, because this town has done a remarkable job. If you look basically over the last, aside from the schools, you look basically since 1990 or so, you've done the library, you've done the police station, you just go through the assets of the town, and you see the departments, and even to the case where we've made investments in our rolling infrastructure in terms of fire apparatus and so forth, we're in a solid position going forward. And as you've seen, the tax levy in Chelmsford relative to those other towns over that 20-year period has been, if anything, it's less than it was 20 years ago relative to the tax burden on other communities in terms of the tax bill. So none of us like to come up here and ask for a debt exclusion, but it's remarkable what we did at DPW. I mean, considering where we were, 15 years ago, running in a trailer on Richardson Road that was leaning, and the facility that we had over on Kidder Road and so forth, to where we are and how we got there, this town should take great pride in terms of a fire station headquarters as opposed to the building we had across from the common that was being held up by wooden beams. We not only replaced that facility financially, prudently, as well as the work we recently did at the North Fire Station and so forth, the senior center and so forth. I mean, we're in a good place. And so, yes, we don't like to come up here and ask for the money, but really there isn't like a long list of debt exclusions that we see coming, and brace yourself. And we're also mindful, and as we've been saying in recent months, we're also mindful that this town has a history of not funding operational overrides, and that's what we're going to be working on going forward. And it's going to mean, as we've done before, it's going to mean temporary reductions in services to weather that condition.
Thank you.
The other thing I would say regarding the excluded debt service projection is that a good thing that, if you look at it this way, is that everyone remembers roughly 20 years ago, the last big secondary school, about $32 million project that was done, involved the high school, middle schools. That bond is the final payment on that bond is going to be made this year in fiscal year 25. The payment's roughly around $830,000 or so. So I'm not saying that you always want to add projects on, but it puts us in a good place because we're going to make that final payment, and then ultimately it will be up to the voters to decide which projects they want to fund. But at least we've come along, and after 20 years, the school project will be dropping off in fiscal year 25. And then all we'll be left with for an existing outstanding project is the DPW project at Alpha Road.
John, do we anticipate that any borrowing for the MSBA would be a 30-year?
We'd have to look at that. That's about probably it's just maximum you could go. I mean, we'd also, you'd always want to do analysis to see, does it make sense to do a 25-year bond versus 30 to save on interest? You want to do that analysis.
Sure.
But that's the maximum that you can go under current state law.
And I know there's a lot of what-ifs there. It's tough to forecast that because we just don't. We're still in the infancy stages of that process. The reimbursement that's done from the state, is that done?
It hasn't been determined yet, but it's done on each individual project case. But we anticipate it'll be at least 52%, could be as 54 and so forth. I'll probably regret saying this, but I think the concern is, Dave and others, is on the residential taxpayer.
Yep.
And the only thing I will say, and I probably shouldn't say it, but
He's gonna say it
it's just
anyway.
my nature, I'm gonna say it. What the other communities have done is they've split the rate to alleviate that problem. So when I mention these other communities, by and large, they've split the rate to alleviate some of that burden on the residential payer. And I know that's a very third rail issue in Chelmsford, but that's the reality. So when you sit there and say, well, wait a minute, how did Tewksbury build the school? How did, and so forth and so forth? It's because they went to the full max
Well,
rate.
my
But I'm just telling you,
thinking has
that's
been-
because that's going to be the question is
I know,
how is
but
it going
my
to be
thinking
borne?
has been, you've had two handicaps,
Right.
okay, and I recognize that in whatever thinking I have on this, okay? I just feel like I have to ask all these questions in order to, make the right decision from a financial point of view. Sorry.
No.
Sorry, that's great.
No.
So I will ask a question that I probably shouldn't ask as the town manager, but I'm going to
Yeah,
ask.
no.
I'm going to ask it anyway.
Doing a lot of that.
Little history here. These major capital projects in Chelmsford over the last 30 years have a history of first iteration, second iteration, and sometimes third iteration, because of the non-appetite, I guess, of the voters to pass the debt exclusions, which I understand. The Center Fire headquarters went through that. I think that was the third iteration, okay? Because the first proposal was a figure that was too high for people to swallow, the second the same, and the third finally passed. So that's been the history of these things. So I guess my question is, after watching the presentation, I think I saw it maybe the fourth time Monday night, so I think I've got it. It's pretty clear to me the need is there. I mean, there's no question there's no question that we have to do something with these facilities. My mind says that I believe this is the third time the town has looked at the configuration issue relative to the number of stations, and this is the third time the answer has come back that we need 5. So I'll accept that. I mean, many people have looked at this a lot sharper than I have, and they've all come to that conclusion. So I certainly accept that. Certainly accept the fact that the facilities need to be upgraded. There's no question about it. So I guess my question would be to the fire chief or to the town manager or to the chairman of the fire study committee. In the event that this project does not pass in its present form, has there been any thought given to a backup plan, if you will, for lack of a better word? That's my question.
We don't have a backup plan, but the reality is the problem doesn't go away if it fails at either the town meeting or the ballot. You noted the history of the failed center station where we originally proposed it with the debt exclusion at Wilson and Chelmsford Street, tried again and then ended up over here. You also noted the issue with the Adams Library that failed. And then most painfully, you probably noted the issue of the high school where they could have done the high school, failed and never addressed it. And then now we couldn't even, now we're addressing a middle school because we can't even go back to the high school because the state won't bring us in. So sometimes the Plan B option, like the 31 middle school project and high school project that got the Performing Arts Center and so forth, wasn't the best outcome.
Right.
As was noted, and it was noted earlier this evening, there are some health and firefighter safety issues that have to be addressed that aren't going away. And those will have to be addressed. So if this fails, I anticipate the select board would gather in November or December and say, where do we go from here in terms of how do we address the safe living quarters for the firefighters who are in those stations, because it is a real legitimate concern. I think, we'll have to do something, and I think the something is probably what we ended up seeing when we renovated the North Fire Station. we had firefighters living in a trailer situation over on Richardson Road with the apparatus, sort of in a outdoor facility type of situation, which is what we're going to have to do during construction if it does succeed. So you're probably looking at that kind of a situation in the interim until there's a better outcome. But I don't know beyond that what you can do. The problem is the need, it's the response time. And it's not just the response time, as was noted in the presentation last week. It's not just response time for fire. It's the response time for medical, the response time for accidents and other emergencies. And I just don't see how the community's going to accept a greater response time than what they've accustomed to by closing the number of stations. So I think the issue becomes, okay, well, we want to keep the response time, so we keep the 5 stations, and then we're in some kind of a temporary housing thing. And the problem is that's fraught with its own problems, as you can imagine, because it's not just where the firefighters are living. It's also the issues of how do you safely store the gear, how do you wash the gear, how do you maintain everything that comes with when they do return from a hazard scene. So that's going to be our challenge if it doesn't succeed. And unfortunately, those are second best solutions that I don't think we want to have to address.
Okay, thank you. And one more question. Am I correct in saying that in order for this to move forward, it requires both a 2/3 approval from town meeting and passage at the ballot? Is that a correct
Yes,
statement?
2/3. The motion at town meeting will be contingent upon, as you can see there, as it's subject to the successful passage of a Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion ballot question, the state election. So if the town meeting votes by 2/3 to approve it, it's a contingent vote, and then you need a majority at the ballot on November 5th. Nothing moves forward unless that happens. So we can't move forward without the debt exclusion, and that's why the motion's written that way. But if we don't get through the town meeting with the 2/3 vote, then the ballot vote in November, if it were passed, would not
And
have any
that's,
effect
yes.
on its own.
That's majority, not a 2/3 of the
Yeah,
bill.
Right.
yeah, exactly.
I have a question. How is things, and this, probably not to you, Paul, how are things decontaminated now?
So to answer your question, so currently at both the headquarters next door and Engine 2, we do have the proper facilities for decontamination for the storage of the gear, and also if they come back and they have to wash it, we have those facilities. If you're in the L-line stations, Engines 3, that we're talking about, Engine 5 or 4, there is a gear washer at Engine 4, but as far as the storage, it's in the, they're storing them in the apparatus bay that's exposed to carcinogens. So if you're in one of those outline stations, if you have to wash your gear, you can bring them into the center, or you can bring them to the north. But you can't do it right away because you're working at those stations. Maybe on your day off, or we would have to make some arrangements.
Right, so
But it's not readily available, to answer your
right,
question.
so does it put people out of position?
Could temporarily, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's something,
That's why we have second set of gears, so they could put their second set, so they might have to come into the center, drop their gear off to be cleaned, and then they have their second set.
yeah, so, but that's not ideal in a long term. because
Ideal,
you're-
no. I
because
agree
you're-
with you.
Then, and if you had I hate to say this, but if you had a busy season, you could leave people with not enough gear. You just had a bad run of luck.
It could be, yeah. It could, it could even be doesn't have to be a structure fire, but even a car fire or something. Or you get last week, good example. We had a trash truck that had not too far from here with the hydraulic line that went, so they got hydraulic fluid on them. So that gear had to be brought back and decontaminated.
So it's not just the gear, it's the people themselves, right? I mean, they.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
They're
right,
in
so you need
these-
to,
Right. Yeah, that's the most important part. That,
right.
If you're in one of those substations that we're talking about, the bunk rooms are located in the apparatus bay. So you're exposed to those carcinogens. As the manager was saying, OSHA is actually looking very strongly at these issues right now, and we expect that there will be a decision. Probably, they'll start probably disseminating their findings next year. My best guess is that we'll see something come into effect in 2026. Once that takes place, we're going to be mandated to following those rules, or we will be out of compliance.
Okay. Thank you.
I think this ties back into also our proper management of the stabilization fund and the fact that it may have to be addressed in the future. We aren't facing those 2.5 override votes that other towns have had to face for operations, at least not currently. And hopefully forecasting, we won't have to do that. We can address it through other means. But we have this and another potentially big debt exclusion coming up. So I think it's going to rely on education. I agree, this has to be done. It's not for both efficiency, economics, and for safety. I wish we didn't have another competing thing coming so soon.
I have to make one final comment. And the reason for it is because I'll tell you how I'm going to vote in the comment. But
Suspense is killing me, Dave.
this is the hardest decision I've had to make since being on the Finance Committee, okay? Because the businessman guy, the finance guy in me says, I'm not voting for any override, period. You draw that line, you go over that line, and, there'll be a second, a third, a fourth, et cetera. But I have to be honest with you. The need is obvious. I mean, you can't have those guys under the condition they're at, and you can't have a future where you're going to have men next to women. They've got to have their own rooms. They've got to be safe. And I'll tell you, my own experience, and a member of my family, if it wasn't for the fire department, he wouldn't be here today. And they were there so quick because they were so close. And our fire chief not only followed up, but then went to the hospital both that night and the next day to see how the guy was. Where do you get that? In how many communities? So I'm voting for this, even though it's hard for me. It's very emotional for me, but I'm definitely voting for it. We have to take care of those guys.
I think we all know someone that lives very close to 3 or 5. We all do.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I live near 5.
Well, I could just down the street from 3, but that wasn't where it was. That was somebody else in my family.
It's not pre-planning there?
But the chief knows.
Yeah.
I think you speak for many of us, and that was very well said. And I share all the same concerns you do, and the same concerns that have been voiced by the chair. However, at the end of the day, the voters in the town are going to make this decision.
Yep.
And I guess I believe that the town meeting really ought to respect that. And I would like to see a 2/3 vote by town meeting to support this. So now you know how I'm going to vote on this, right? I would like to see a 2/3 vote by town meeting, and then I would like the folks in Chelmsford on a general ballot to make the decision, because that's where the decision is going to be made. Should not be made by a small subset of town meeting reps. It should be made by the voters. So I am going to vote that we recommend that they pass this.
Well said.
Any further discussion?
I'm going to vote for it, and I hope that the chief, and when they do the presentation, really hammer home the OSHA possibilities, because we'll save $15 this week, but next week you have to spend this, but years, because we're in ocean compliance, we have to put them in separate housing because it's not kosher. Sometimes you just have to do the repair.
The chief will make an excellent presentation.
Well, I think it's actually the Fire Station Study Committee and the chair of the Fire Station Study will be making the presentation.
They will make an excellent
Excellent
presentation.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Article 17.
Article 17. I make a motion to recommend approval of Article 17, rescind unexpended Community Preservation Fund appropriation submitted by the Community Preservation Committee, as written.
I believe it's my turn. I second it.
Been a while, I don't know. Discussion?
Who wants to vote against
A club.
this article?
No one, Sam.
I didn't think so.
It's a no-brainer.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Article 18.
I make a motion to recommend approval of Article 18, Community Housing at 1 Smith Street, submitted by Community Preservation Committee in the amount of $2,600,000, as written.
Second it.
Discussion?
I have to say what Chelmsford Housing Choice, led by Mr. Hedison, they make good projects. Their stuff isn't ugly. It's usually well thought out, and obviously he cares a lot about his residents, and I was impressed that he was able to get that much stuff for the heating and heating the air conditioning.
The need is definitely there for this. If you've ever been to Smith Street and been in those units, I have, the need is there.
And this ask is from CPC, and it's a small portion of the
Correct.
all overall funds that are being secured for this, but it's a necessary step in order to proceed with it. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Article 19.
I make a motion to recommend approval of Article 19, grant easement to Chelmsford Water District, submitted by the school committee, as written.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Article 20.
I make a motion to recommend approval of Article 20, transfer parcels to Conservation Commission, submitted by the Select Board, as written.
Your turn, Dave.
As stated. I second it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion?
These are all the little wetlands, right?
These are the-
They're not all
we would-
little, but they're all wet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's a
pretty easy,
pretty straightforward.
pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Article 21.
I love this one.
I make a motion to recommend approval of Article 21, street acceptance, Parkhurst Road, submitted by Select Board, as written.
I second it.
Discussion?
About time.
Yeah, that's right. Who knew?
Welcome to town.
No, this happens more often than you think.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Across Massachusetts because of just the way our streets are.
Now, shouldn't we get more money because once it's approved? don't
This will
we-
be added to a
Yeah,
Chapter 90
Absolutely.
This is money
calculation.
There you
Yes.
go.
Love it.
Get that 3 cents will make all the difference.
Yep.
It's all about the pennies.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And so concludes our votes on the town meeting articles.
I never thought we'd get through this quickly.
All right. Next on our agenda is discussion of future meetings and timeline for Finance Committee warrant book production. Pam, we need to have we'll circulate the book when? And then
I'm
Chair?
gonna send out what I have this weekend.
Okay.
Without the letter, probably.
Yeah, it'll be without the letter.
Yeah, and excuse me, and then when you give the letter,
Sure.
then we're ready to go.
The information session is the week before, so 21st is the start of fall time, an earlier date. Does that mean the 21st? The 16th is going to be the informational session. We want to be certainly before that informational session on the 16th. Hopefully the week before, at the very least, with the book over. Have they given you an indication of how long they expect the production to take?
It's usually about 3 or 4 days.
3 or 4 days. Okay.
I think there's a holiday in there.
There is.
Yeah,
Yes.
so,
And that's the same week as the informational session,
yeah, I have the book being delivered to the printer on the 8th.
on the 8th. Okay. All right. Yep. So there were no votes that were split, if you will. But if there's any information you'd like to contribute to add into the letter, don't hesitate to do so, and I will incorporate that into the letter, so we can get that together and get that published and get that added to the book. But we'll plan on having everything off to the town website and then produced in time for the informational session. As far as future meetings, that concludes our meetings unless there's a special town meeting, which I hope there is not, until end of January, beginning of February, except for the tri-board meeting, which I anticipate will be sometime in either December or January.
So, town meeting,
December.
then not till December?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, at least. Of course, Dave will be on the capital planning committee, so he has a couple more meetings coming up. But,
'Cause
yeah,
he's-
no,
he's extra.
I know John's excited.